Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Interlocking Threads Conversations with International Students. This is a project we started to connect with international alumni through casual conversations grounded in our current situation and past shared experiences. This episode was recorded on July 6th when we spoke with Deena Ismail, who's Palestinian American, Anja Kresojevic from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Nabil Parkar from the United Kingdom. It was really interesting to hear how their work has been impacted by the pandemic, leading the conversation to the topic of reinventing our current moment by learning to create our own experiences. They also shared about living with family during quarantine, cultural identity, and much more. So keep listening to hear more from these three alum. We hope you enjoy and thank you for listening.
So thank you again to today's guests, Deena, Nabil, and Anja, for joining us. Before we get started, we're going to go through some short introductions about our production team, and then we will introduce you, Deena, Nabil, and Anja, and dive into the conversation. So my name is Rihanna. I graduated from Earlham College this May, and I actually met Lynn later in my college career when I started organizing student programs. And I've been working with Lynn, Lon, and Annika on different versions of this project since January. So Annika, who could not be here today, graduated from Earlham in 2019 and worked with Lynn from her first day at Earlham. She went to the events office and immediately became part of that family. And she's an international student from Germany, and she's now part of the production team. We do have a fourth member of our production team. Her name is Lan. She's from Vietnam, and she also just graduated this May. And she is our tech wizard. So she will be joining the projects from behind the scenes editing. And so I'm here with Lynn, who is the connecting thread between us all. And so I will turn it over to her to give your introductions.
All right, I'm Lynn Knight, and I worked at Earlham for over 30 years. That's hard to believe when you start counting it up. But I knew these three alum that are part of this conversation today when I was the director of events at Earlham. And the first one I'm going to start with, and I always called her Anja Kresojevic, and that was something when I was looking at your personal data sheet, Anja, I'm thinking, I am so grateful that Earlham did not make us call you by your Mr. and Mrs. Miss and by your last names, because I would have had a terrible time. I had enough trouble sometimes with the first names. So Anja is country of origin is Bosnia, and I did not know this, Herzegovina. Is that correct? I was practicing it. Graduated in 2014 with a degree in business nonprofit management and international studies. You are currently located in Mostar in Bosnia. You are the Program USA Advisor for the region on Education USA. Is there anything else that I do want to say this about Anja? You started out as an usher, an assistant manager, then a manager. Then after you graduated, you didn't want to leave. So you stayed on as a part-time assistant director of events, and then it turned into a full-time position as the assistant director of events. Is there anything you want to add to your intro?
That's pretty much it for my intro. I'm basically a program manager, but I'm also advisor for Education USA for the southern region. So I'm locally employed staff by the State Department, in essence.
And so you encourage students to come to the U.S. for education. Is that part of what your job is, correct?
Well, I encourage students to come to the United States for education or start thinking about possible options for them to study either at undergraduate or graduate level. And I also promote various student exchange programs that are offered by the United States Embassy within my own country. I also advise students on the entire process of applying, preparation for tests, writing college essays, all the tips and tricks of how to apply for U.S. college. So that's what I
fascinating. We're going to have to get back to that and talk more. Next, we have Deena Ismail, and country of origin is Palestine, U.S. Graduation 2009. with a major in Peace and Global Studies. You are currently located in New York. You are a licensed social worker and supervisor of programming at the Door. Before we ask you more about the Door, you too started out as an usher, assistant, then went on to a house manager. And when I was thinking, reminiscing about personal stories about each of you, one of them I remembered, we had a delay in a start of a sold out show. And I remember people were out the door in the lobby. You're trying to squeeze over 600-700 people in a space that holds 50. And you came up and your eyes were as big as your face and go, I quit, I can't do this. I quit, I can't do this. And my response was, when this is all over, we're both gonna have a good cry, but get back in there and take care of everybody. And the event was what? It was 30 some minutes late starting because there were technical difficulties, but you handled it and you came forward and you became a good, strong leader. So tell us a little bit about the Door where you work.
So the Door is New York City's largest social service agency working with young adults. We serve young people between the ages of 12 to 24 in a wide range of things, from health care to like anything you can imagine, health care, to mental health, to education, to work readiness, to arts programming, to runaway and homeless youth services, we provide supportive housing for some. It's really an amazing place. We serve around 11,000 young adults a year. And of the 11,000, around 3,000 are homeless. And I'm a supervisor programming there. And I actually think, like, in that story, Lynn, what you just shared is like a normal day for me, not as a house manager, but like crisis regulation. And I do think that things like that really prepared me for like what I do now.
That's great. All right. And then finally, we have Nabil Parkar. Country of origin is the UK. Graduated in 2012 with a major in business with nonprofit management. You are currently located in London. You are the senior marketing program manager for Expedia, and you're located in London. So how is that going with the pandemic?
It's an interesting time to be working in the travel industry. But the good news is that in some parts of the world, primarily in the East and in Asia, things are looking much more close to normal, and likewise here in Europe as well, more increasingly so. But it's been an interesting couple of months. I only joined Expedia in January, so I'm new to the role, new to the company, and within 2 months, the whole entire business model has obviously been turned on its head because of the current situation. So it's been a lot to learn, but it's been a lot of fun as well, I suppose. As fun as it could be. A lot of learning, which is probably the best outcome for it all from my perspective. Yeah.
And when I was reminiscing about you too started out as Anja and Deena did, as usher, assistant manager, but there seemed to be, if I recall, there was another assistant manager that you and Deena couldn't decide who was going to be the manager and who was going to be the assistant manager, and there was even a thing with name tags, if I recall, that yes, you all had. And you were all proper, and Deena was having a ball with you with that. I remembered you were both wearing the manager's badge on the same night for the same event and fussing back and forth about who is going to be the manager for the evening. So that was one of the things. And you also, one of my...
Next day we lost that. She lost her name badge the next day for some reason. I can't remember how, but she lost it. Yeah.
Too much fun the night before.
That might have been. She was one that would come to my office and sleep in the green room and have me wake her up when it was time to go to class, because she was afraid she'd miss class. So I said, yes. All right. Thank you all so much for being here for this Interlocking Threads Conversations with International Students.
Yesterday, Lynn and I were speaking, and we were talking about what this time is. And I don't know if we want to begin here or begin with like what your transition has been since university. But Lynn and I were speaking yesterday about what this time is, and it feels like such a waiting period where things are on pause for some people, things are on hold, but it's also not on pause and it's not on hold. Like things are still moving, but they're just moving in a different rhythm. And so I'm really curious of just how your rhythms have changed. And that can be like both on a personal level, entering into like, have your social worlds changed at all? Like how has virtual reality become more of like a normalcy for you, but also like the other world, which is also work, which you've spoken, like we've tapped into a little bit, but how has your work changed in this moment? Deena, I'm thinking of you of like crisis management, how like you are working like on such a personal level. So how has the pandemic affected like person to person interaction during this time? And so kind of wondering about those things.
So I think like, right, it's like multifaceted, right? Like in a world where I never imagined in the type of work that I do, working from home being a possibility, right? Like the idea of like, nope, this is not work you do from home, to you have no choice. But I'm more on like the creative side of things. I do behavior management as well. So that part of my job is kind of gone, right? Like where like I support in de-escalation, breaking up fight, which is actually really nice in that regard. My job in general, I usually have no control over my time. None. At any moment, you can hear something going on outside. A person can like, right, be overdosing. A person can be homeless. A person just might be having a really bad day. And, you know, as one of the supervisors, it's my job to like help or to deploy the way needed and manage the crisis. So the way it's moved is like I've been having to like rethink what engagement looks like. I manage a team of 4 engagement specialists whose job is to engage with our hard to reach populations, as well as I run, which is a total opposite end of the spectrum, which is our youth leadership program, which pays young people to learn about how to be peer-to-peer support, as well as we train them on civic engagement and how to empower the communities to be civically and socially just, and teach them on equity and things like that. So everything has had to move virtually. I just got off a team meeting with my team, and they're just like, Deena, we are so sick of things changing. Every 5 seconds, you're like, try this, try this, try this. And so it's all trial and error in that capacity. And I think at the beginning when crisis happened, I felt really, really overwhelmed because I'm a fixer. I do not like knowing people are in pain. I don't like knowing I can't fix the situation. And with COVID, there's only so much you can do. I'm not going to go like run into somebody's house where, you know, it's just not safe, and I shouldn't be running into people's houses. So it's been kind of like trying to learn how to do crisis management via phone, right? Or being like, where's a safe environment for you to talk, right? Because oftentimes people have nowhere that they can talk. They come to where I work as their safe environment. I mean, kind of being okay. I'm also a control freak. And so being okay with not having control, right? Only doing the best that I can do, and knowing that like everyone has my email, everybody knows how to contact me and my team. And that's all I can do right now. We provide, right? And saying like, hey, you need food, you need clothes. If that's the issue, you can come between these times and get it. I'll even give you Metro cards if you need a way to get places, right? And so kind of learning to relinquish control. And it's been a really cool time to redesign what engagement looks like. How do you engage the next generation of people, right? In a way, right? Everybody is sick of Zoom. Everybody is sick of Instagram. Like, right? Like, that's just the reality. Young people don't want to be sitting here doing this. I don't want to be sitting here listening to people talk about feelings all day. I want to be able to hug somebody and tell them about my feelings. So it's about like creating that one-on-one connections. Even that's not my job anymore. Right? You need to talk. I will do it in whatever capacity you want. Does that mean meeting at Central Park and standing 6 feet away from each other, like on benches on the opposite end of each other, but talking through it with you? Because I know you can do that, and doing it, right? Reinventing the way we think about doing things. And it's really taught us that like human connection is like really the most important thing. We often like, you don't really, in human touch, right? Like I hug these young people day in and day out. I don't think about it twice because they have nobody. A lot of them don't understand what like unconditional love feels like. So how do you translate that in a virtual capacity? And that means being present. And that means sitting there and looking at your camera. And that means like being ready when you say you're going to be ready, even if they're not ready, right? And it's about listening to them and their needs. It's also a really cool time for my youth leaders, because who knew that the Black Lives Matter would erupt again during this time, right? And so it's kind of been really cool to watch the next generation of people like being like, learn, like young people who you often don't think of as people who are very socially engaged. All of a sudden you like, right, I've had to learn, they're teaching me how to use the virtual world as a way to do these things. So yeah, it's just, everything is reinventing, I guess, is what it comes down to, and rolling with the punches as it goes. And that's a really hard thing to do when you like to know what's next and you just can't know what's next. But it's really cool to also, it's cool to learn like how to engage with people who might not be able to get somewhere, because right, we've lived in a world where you have to be at an appointment, whether it's the doctor, whether it's here or there, right? And now we're saying like, you actually can't, especially in the US, where I'm based, right? Like this, it's a disaster. I'm in New York. Well, in this current moment, I'm at home with my parents in Ohio, but I just got here. In general, I was in New York, the epicenter of the pandemic, right? So, you know, the idea of even taking one train stop to the doctor hasn't been an option. Same with doing therapy for clients. So it's been really cool to learn that like, hey, we can translate this to also a virtual experience and give people the power of choice eventually down the road, right? Give people the choice. Like, do you want to come in? Right? Do you need to come in to talk about your birth control today? Or can we do this over a video and I can just send it to the pharmacy? Because it might be more unsafe for you or be more inconvenient for you to take planes, trains, and automobiles just to come for 20 minutes, right? And so a lot of we often focus on no. We hear, you can't do this, like during this time. And I've really tried to reconstruct my brain and my staff's brain and my young people's brain. What can we do? And like, how do we embrace this opportunity as a way to reinvent and a way to rethink what our world can look like? We don't always want to be virtual, but like, how do we make meaningful experiences when we can't be virtual, instead of just saying like, okay, like I'm just going to see you for 5 minutes and go, but how do you really be intentional about everything you do?
Anja, you're working with young people. What are you finding? You're on the opposite side of the world. Are you finding some of the same experiences as what Deena's finding?
My work is a bit different in a sense of advising and counseling is mostly due to the services we offer. So it's like, this is an option and this is an option. And if you want option A, these are the steps you have to take. If you option B, if you want to option B, these are the steps you kind of have to take. It's more of that kind of line of work. However, pandemic here in my country started sometimes in February, late February, beginning of March, and everything progressed really, really quickly with rules and regulations getting more stricter and stricter and stricter. And really what happened for me is that one Thursday, our security guard walked into the office and said, pack it up, let's go, come on, we are leaving, we are locking the building, it's goodbye. And we're like, wait, what? Because we are located in a huge building, which is also a high school on several floors. There are actually two high schools in my building. There is UWC and then there is Gymnasia. So there is a lot of students in the building. And he's like, yep, let's do it. Let's pack it up. Let's go. And our office is a kind of open door office, and we have open door policy. So you can enter anytime. You don't necessarily have to schedule meetings with us. You can just like come and talk with us. And yeah, I just grabbed my laptop and was like, okay, I don't know, we'll figure out this, and went home and just was, I remember going through city that was bustling with cars, with people just trying to figure out stuff, because everything was, they had basically announced on us that everything is shutting Thursday night. So as you can imagine, everything was crazy. The supermarkets were full and just people didn't know how long will it last. There were so many questions. And I remember texting with my coworkers, like, what now? What happens now? There's 4 centers within our country, all a specific region. And that night we were like, okay, we need to figure out a plan for online work. And we started doing our typical workshops that I would do face to face with my students. I started doing them via Zoom. I started doing them with Google Meet. I started doing so many things online that are usually face to face, and my work values face to face, and we are trained face to face to work with people. Because yes, I can explain you how it is to study in the States, you know, what do you need? Like you need SAT, you need TOEFL, you need this, you need that, you need this documentation, you can find it here like this online. But there is so many questions that kids have, and it's much easier to do it in person, and then I can pull up a book or pull out a pamphlet of a college and just I get more info to the students kind of face to face. And then we started refreshing our YouTube channel. I started filming for that. I was actually supposed to travel in the beginning of March to the United States for professional development. And then that got scraped like Friday night. So everything was just like, nope, we are not doing it. Everything is going to be online. There's concerns about COVID. We had an entire cohort of students, about 10 to 15 of them, that were supposed to go to the universities in fall, that were just like, so what happens now? And then it was a lot of work, it was a lot of logistics. It was really stressful knowing that my students might be at US campuses stuck, either because there are no planes to get them to Bosnia and Herzegovina, our borders were closed, our government isn't really cooperating kind of a type government that will send airplanes like some countries did to get their expats and bring them back home. They only sent it to Italy for reasons that we do not understand. So it was really hard to kind of assess what's going to happen and to advise my students for a very long time, for 2 to 3 weeks. I could only say, I don't know. It's ongoing. We're still waiting. You know, my office is closed. I hope, I'm very grateful that a lot of resources for my work and that my kids need already exist online. So the resources that I have left in my office, such as pamphlets, such as prep books, can be found online. And it's easier for me to kind of do it. I would arrange with students, hey, could you like show up in front of my office and I'll just like kind of give you the SAT prep book, and like we will do a quick exchange of like you saying hi, me giving you the book, and etc. And then we returned to the offices in May, end of May, and we've been working from the office with all of the precautions, of course. But still we are doing online programming. I still do not do workshops. I sit in my office, but everything is still online. And I don't know how long will that be, because we are now currently, I think, under a second wave of COVID. My country. So they're thinking of again imposing quarantine and restrictions, and we had for really a long time very strict quarantine where you cannot leave until the certain day or until the certain time of the day, and you can be for so long outside, and you have to wear all the precautions. And you know, if the police stopped you and you're like, I'm just walking, it was a big no, you can get fined. So there was a lot of things that changed. I also travel a lot due to my work. I cover basically entire region, which for me means five counties basically, and over 40 high schools. So I visit them during my regular work hours. I usually go to the school and I talk with students. And that changed since the kids were sent home and were told it's now online. So a lot of that, we still don't know what's really going to happen with the cohort, what's, you know, how the new academic year will look like. And for now we are all online, everything has been moved online. So at least we have that. And I'm not sure what's going to happen because there has been talks of second quarantine. So we are not sure how will that go for my country. And it was really stressful, emotionally draining to know that my kids, my advisees that I worked for 2 years, for a year, prepping them for college, are now stuck somewhere, either stuck on an airport or stuck on the U.S. campus, or U.S. campus is closing and they have nowhere to go because they are international students. They don't have any family in the United States. Luckily, my boss, my national coordinator, was somehow, I wouldn't necessarily call it oracle, but she had some kind of promotion that we will need it. So she created a Facebook group with all of them, and we kind of connected. Oh yeah, your campus is open. Can you like admit to? Can you ask that we send 2 students to you? Can they stay? And also dealing with families that were freaking out, that were like, borders are closing and my kid is in the middle of Texas. What now? Like, is my kid going to stay there for how long? Or my kid is in New York or in Florida. What now? Like, can anyone help? And we were very fortunate to be helped by the U.S. Embassy within my country. I have to say that we couldn't rely, unfortunately, on the Bosnian and Herzegovinian government, because they were like, we don't know how many nationals are in United States. And we get them their number and they were like, well, you know, they're in the States, so good luck to them. And we tried to do a lot of our diaspora people helped, so that was good. Unfortunately, that is a consequence of a war, that we have a huge diaspora, but luckily they were very grateful and helpful, and were just saying, hey, I have a room empty, you know, my kids are, I don't know, in Canada or Europe or somewhere working, and I have a room empty. Few students can come live with me until this passes. So that was truly great. So what I learned is that it was challenging. At the beginning, I would be pulling easily 12-hour shifts, easily. I would sit at my laptop at 8 a.m., finish 8 p.m., 9 p.m. As Deena mentioned, I'm a bit sick of Zoom, but, you know, out of the 2 evils, you know, not talking with my advisees and using Zoom, I would always, you know, choose the Zoom, which is a lesser evil for me. I learned a lot about social media, which I didn't necessarily know before. I learned how, in the terms of, you know, great stress and kind of uncertain times for everyone, the good side of the humans can appear, the hope, the resilience, the perseverance, the helping each other. Because we had some kids that never met each other before, that are from complete opposite, you know, cities, complete opposite nationalities within my country, saying, hey, you know, do you need a place? I'm with my aunt in, I don't know, Indiana, or with my aunt in Chicago. How about, you know, come by? Do you have like a means to, you know, come to the Chicago, and we will kind of help you. We will pick you up from, I don't know, airport, buses, whatever. So that was truly great. And I have to say, for my work, it was a lot of kind of boom, because now we are much more famous, I think, that we were before. We are not usually the type of the network that promotes heavily. You're not going to read articles about us, you know, our coordinators are not in the media. It's not how we do things. However, now with the Instagram, with Facebook, where our target audience is, people get to, you know, learn more about us, learn more about possibilities. And I have seen increase in kids really wanting to study in the States. And I have seen really great scholarships given to my advisees. I have advisee with a full Harvard scholarship that's waiting on him when all of this passes, which was amazing. And I learned a lot in this time. It was challenging. It was challenging for my parents, for me. I personally didn't leave apartment unless it was for necessary things in 2.5 months of the quarantine. I'm very lucky that my circle surrounding me and my support network is the support network that will stay even during the harder times. So I had online coffees with friends, online meetings with my supervisors, I'm very happy that both my work team and my kind of, how to say, like personal team or friends team is supportive. And we were kind of, okay, we cannot do it face to face. We just now switch to what's available, so online. And that was truly great. But I'm a bit afraid for my parents who are older and they are under the what's called endangered group for COVID. So yeah, I'm trying to protect them as much as I can, taking all the necessary precautions, even when I'm working, even when I'm very now, since the rules are laid back, I'm very aware of where I'm entering and how am I going about my shopping habits and everything. Like if I see a lot of people, I'm not going to enter there and really stuff like that. I would say that life has changed definitely 180 degrees, at least for me here, because usually Mostar is very laid back. We are very used to meeting with our friends. That's in our culture, that's in our tradition. We prefer face-to-face meetings. In general, that's our mentality. And now, not being able to do that and having to really think, is it wise to go into a coffee shop and meet with a friend? Has really changed the mentality. And I'm now it's just for me to see what's going to happen next, because we really don't know, no one knows what's going to happen with COVID. And hopefully it dies out by the winter. That's the hope, but we will really see. The only negative side is that of this entire COVID situation that I got out of it is the fact that I really got disappointed in my government. And I honestly, I know that my country isn't perfect by all the rankings, all the parameters, all the economical statistical data. We are really in a bad position, but I always believe there is hope. I came back to kind of build that hope and to kind of be, part of the people that are kind of doing some changes. And I honestly thought that, me here and that individual there and that individual there and that individual there will kind of collect into kind of, a snowball that will create something, and that will kind of, say to our government, hey, you need to kind of do things the normal way. We will be like responsible for your governance. And the COVID situation has shown that they really do not care. And it's hard to live with that notion. It's hard to live with the notion of being, patriot, one that loves the country, one that has purposely decided to stay in my country, and then just being, government doesn't care. So it's kind of, I have to say, we're constantly wondering, like, if all of the things that I'm doing, helping kids get into the colleges, get into the universities, teaching kids for free, giving free tutor sessions, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Honestly, is it going to change anything? My work, yes, because kids do go, kids get amazing education. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. But in any way, shape or form, they improve their lives and they improve life of their families, which for me, I guess that's the pinnacle. I mean, coming from my own perspective, that's why I chose to come to Ireland, to improve my life and to improve my family's life, down the road, and eventually somehow contribute to my country in any shape or form that I can and help my country. Maybe not through political means, but doing what I can at the local level that might improve my city, that might improve situation for youth within my city. So I don't know really what's going to happen in the future. Again, I have to stress that, but it's really a range of emotions, going from positive to negative. And I think I will need to kind of sit down and cash out those emotions and be like, okay, well, what's the message of this entire time for me? What did I learn? Did I personally grow from this time, or did I just bury myself in work and be like, okay, until this passes, I'm going to be like an ostrich with, my head into the work, and hopefully when I emerge from the work, everything will pass. So yeah, I think now it's time for self-reflection, or once this kind of passes and eases on us, which hopefully will be soon. So that's more or less on my end, and I'm very willing to answer any questions, really anything. Yeah, so, and I'm really grateful for today's dialogue, to see other perspectives, to see people that I haven't seen in a while. That's always nice, although I'm pretty sure that Zoom is kind of now, for most of us, it's a lot. And it's like when someone mentions Zoom, a lot taken, but I'm really grateful for this opportunity and really open to any discussion, any thoughts, any feedback, any questions, and willing to answer any questions, really. So.
Nabil, you started a new job just as COVID was building. So you were already in London though, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. So I've been in London throughout, so that's I guess a good thing. I was actually in Seattle in the back end of January, just as this was kicking off, because I came out to the Expedia headquarters for some training that I needed to do, and I was one of I suppose the last ones to be able to do a business trip in the business before everything kind of shut down. So it's always nice to go over to the US, and it's the first time I'd been that far north and west, I suppose, in the country. So luckily back then it was okay, and it also quickly became one of the I guess the centers in the United States. I think the first case of COVID was actually in Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. So that was that, but luckily no impact on me, and I made it back okay. And I didn't know anyone in the city, so I socially distanced, but with no other option, because that's all that was there. But in London, I guess one of the benefits, I suppose, from my end, from the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, is because it's such a global company, everybody I work with isn't in London. I work with my close people that interact with on a day-to-day basis, probably 30, 40 people, of which 2 or 3 are based in the UK. So from that perspective, the company was very, very well set up to accommodate working from home. All of us at the company, and even in my last role, were very well versed in Zoom and Blue Jeans and Microsoft Teams and Slack and all the other variations of communications tools that exist. So that wasn't as big of a challenge for me personally. But being in the travel industry, the biggest thing was just, okay, wow, we're in a world where everyone, especially I suppose Earlham students, loves to get out, loves to travel, loves to meet people from different backgrounds, loves to explore. And that's one of the pros from why I chose to work in this industry, I suppose, is being able to talk about that every single day, and how can we enrich people's lives as a result of travel. And he went from having that day-to-day conversation to having a global ban on travel pretty much almost overnight. So there was a couple of weeks in there where, as I think a business, and as people who love to travel and work in travel, we had to take a pause and say, okay, what really is going on, and how does it impact us? How will it impact us over the short term? Obviously, we all know the short-term impacts now, but also the longer term. And how can we best prepare for when people decide that it is safe, and when governments decide that it is safe to travel and move again, and how can we help enable that safely? So that's largely what my work transitioned to. Everything I was working on in January and February is kind of out of the window for the time being, and pretty much transitioned 100% into making sure that we can help to make travel accessible and safe when possible to do so. From a personal perspective, again, like everybody here, and I think Deena and Anja talked about it in detail, I think we all miss going to the coffee shop, going out to restaurants. One of the great things about living in New York, living in London, sorry, I've never been to Mostar, but I'm sure it's the same, is that we miss, Deena and knows very well that we always used to go try a new restaurant out, almost a couple of times, whenever the opportunity arose, and meet up with friends. So that all also stopped overnight. So I went from being very, very active in the city and enjoying the city to being in one of these global cities that just had nothing else going on. So that took some time to get used to. And again, you take a pause and really just sit back and try to understand what is the safest thing to be doing at the moment. So I actually moved, like Deena did now, I moved back in with my parents in the countryside for a couple of months, just to get as far, to distance myself from people as best I could. And lockdown here was relatively strict as well. We are now very much coming out of it, and I can speak a bit more about that as well. But for the most part, for about 3 months, all we had open was supermarkets and pharmacies. So if you need medication, you can go get that. And then you're supposed to go once a week to get groceries as and when you needed it, or in as few trips as possible. Which again took some time to get used to, especially when all you have to do, you're in the same desk for work, and you're in the same house speaking to family only, in person, face to face. So it takes some time to kind of get used to the Zoom way of life. But those restrictions are thankfully and hopefully permanently easing off. London this past weekend opened up pubs and restaurants for the first time since March in a very, very socially distant way, I suppose. Haircuts are also allowed. So I had a haircut for the first time in 3 months yesterday, which was also nice. But the new thing here now is that everywhere you go, you need to sign up and let the venue know where you are. So if I go to a restaurant, I'll sign into the restaurant. They'll take my phone number down. They'll take my details. If someone tests positive and was also at the restaurant within 2 weeks, they will contact me, and then I need to self-isolate for 2 weeks straight away. So that's the system that we have in place. I mean, the inputs of data are going in. That was clear from this weekend. Whether or not the system works, we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. It's the way Boris Johnson is dealing with this government. I don't know. But let's see. Fingers crossed it's a system that works and that will allow things to kind of continue to open as we move forward here.
It's interesting because I've only been in Ohio for like a few days. I didn't come here to isolate. I just came here because I haven't seen my family, and my brother was supposed to get married this summer in Lebanon. Can't, so we're just doing a civil ceremony here. But so in New York, similar, we have not. It's my theory is Americans are impossible to control. Just end of. I don't care what we're talking on. It's just like we don't like rules. And I don't know how political or not political this conversation is going to get, but our government as well. I'm ashamed to call this government my government. I'm in Ohio. It's a two whole different worlds. I imagine like same thing if I went to Indiana, it would be similar as it is in Ohio. But like New York, majority of people wear masks most of the time. There's things like that. Like I went into the store yesterday or a few days ago. Here, there's people without masks on. There is, like in Ohio, there's, somebody said like, why should I wear a mask? My president doesn't wear a mask, right?
Oh, okay.
In New York, we've entered, we're like in a multi-step phase. The city is in a multi-step phase process. We were supposed to be moving to what's called phase 3, which meant that outdoor seating at restaurants was allowed. Phase 3 was supposed to allow for and hair salons had opened. We were supposed to be moving to other more, I could go get my nails done, my eyebrows done, maybe capacity inside restaurants. I think that's been delayed, but de Blasio has now announced that all public schools will be open at full capacity. Because apparently 75% of the people polled in New York, parents polled, want their children back in schools. But the real reason they want their children back in schools, right, is so that they can work.
Yeah.
And so why aren't we reinvesting our money in a way that provides childcare services? Yes, in a socially distant way as well. Let's be creative. That's not my job to figure that out, how that works. Or reducing funding on our police to be able to create more childcare options in the school securities, because you don't need that much money in school security because school's not even open, and we don't need that much school whatever. Anyway, so like you, Nabil, like life in a metropolitan city like New York is slowly going back to whatever the new normal means. We do not have those systems in place, like you said, like restaurants to track people. But COVID tests are very easy to get. Very, very easy to get in New York. You don't have to pay for them. They're free. I can just like schedule an appointment with the city or walk into an urgent care. I've gotten it twice, as well as an antibody test anytime I know I'm going to be interacting with like, right, I came home, I wanted to make sure I didn't have COVID before I came home. But yeah, it's really interesting. I can imagine London and New York, Mostar too, actually, but imagining what life will look like as we transition back. These are very vibrant cities, which are full of life and really rely. And if this goes past summer, summer has allowed people to be very creative about the ways they interact with people. When I was in New York from March until May, living in an apartment by myself, it was the loneliest time of my freaking life. Like, right, my brother lives in New York, but we couldn't go into each other's apartments, right? We were, right, we would see each other on his roof, we would see each other on walks, but nobody's allowed in your apartment, you're not allowed in anybody's. I mean, I was talking to my aloe plant. That was like my best friend. It's huge now, mind you, probably because I get so much love. And if I get a sunburn from being outside now for too much, I have that large aloe plant to help me out. You know, I was preparing, guys. But that's all to say, like, I'm curious, like, for everybody else, like, everybody's experience is different, right? I was alone. I have been alone, except I just happened to be home for a few weeks, but in Ohio. But in general, I was alone the entire time. And some people are like, I wish I was home so I have to, like, interact with all these people, like these people in my face all the time. And at times I can understand that, but I didn't, right? For me, I was like, I just want to hug somebody. I just want to tell somebody my thought, right? And so that was my experience. And so I'm curious for people who have been with their families, right? Both of you guys have shared you've been with your families, what that's also been like being in a home stuck with your mom and dad. Like, do you feel like you're reverting back to being a teenager? Like, what does that feel like?
So for me, it was almost, so both my parents work in the healthcare system within the NHS. So they were both going to hospitals every day and working, whereas I was at home. So it's kind of flipped, because the elderly were supposed to be at home, the young ones are supposed to be safe, whatever it is. So it kind of was the other way around. So, but yeah, it took some while to get used to. So it was me, on the days when my dad was working from home, my sister was also back at my parents' house. Mm-hmm. There were three of us fighting for, time to have a quiet space in the house to conduct a meeting or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I live by myself here in London, but again, I would not have enjoyed, I think, being alone through much of that time. I can totally understand how lonely it could have got, especially when you can't leave or you can only do essential things. So having at least my sister around during the day was nice. I'd never spent that much time with her, I don't think ever, since we were kids, which was really, really good. Similarly, being able to have my parents around in the evenings or whenever we weren't working was great. Another benefit, I think, from me anyway, and then I'll hand over to you, Anja, or anyone else on the call, was the fact that having people around enabled me to stop working at the right times. Mm-hmm. Because I work with people in Seattle, so time zones are all over the place. So it's really, really easy for me to carry on working up until 9, 10 o'clock at night here, and I wouldn't think of it. So that having to stop for dinner and being at a normal time and having those structures in place was really, really helpful for me to kind of distinguish and divide personal time from work time.
Yeah. That's definitely a distinction I've seen coming home. Otherwise, much like you, Anja, I've worked on average until coming to Ohio, 12 to 13-hour days.
Yeah. Yeah, working these long hours. It's because I've never worked this long in my working career, I think. Sorry, Lynn.
Yeah.
But
that's 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I think it's a lot of different. I have kind of toyed with the idea of moving out of my parents' apartment. but Balkan families are like, you stay together until you die, kind of notion. And I'm an only child, which doesn't help at all to that idea. And my parents are like, yeah, you should maybe move out, but why would you? And they like to toy with the notion of being progressive. So they charge me rent for my bedroom in which I grew up, which is another kind of gives you a notion of what Balkan families are. Anyhow, I worked a lot, as Nabil said, and as you, Deena said, like really punching in 12 hours, 10-hour shifts were really nothing. And I kind of created my home office, so to say, in my bedroom, and I would just be like typing. You would see me in the morning, like typing, and then in the night I would come out like a hamster, And really, my parents didn't get to see me that much. I worked, and sometimes they were really kind of nice, and they were like wondering what am I doing, and they really wanted to see what am I doing. And I would be in online meetings with America, with the State Department staff, and I'd be like, no, please, like, leave, shut the door, leave. And then like they would come and they would bribe me with things, like they would either bring strawberries or chocolate and just like push it to me, like put it on the ground and push it towards me, like you would feed an animal you're scared of, which was cute. And then on weekends, I would go to like bigger supermarkets to get food. And at some point during the quarantine, it got really into the argument of me and my parents, me telling them like, no, you have to be responsible. You cannot leave the apartment. Like, no, you cannot leave. You're an endangered group. Like it was me being an adult in the house and them acting like a kids that like are tired of rules and just want to go outside, and they don't understand what's the issue, and they're gonna wear masks, but like let me out, and why can I not go here? Why can I not go there? So that is a bit challenging. It was challenging to like really keep track of them, so to say, because I was really scared for them. And like if I'm at the meeting, when I would hear a door or like a lock of my apartment, I'll be like, oh, no, we are not doing this. We are so not doing this. And yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then our government allowed older people working until noon for whatever reason during the quarantine, and like for the purpose of getting their retirement checks from the bank and stuff. And that's some things, those are the things that they have to do themselves with their IDs, that I cannot like pick up their checks in the bank. And so yeah, that was mostly like that. And then I had a couple of times really like, oh, okay, I'm working until this, I'm working until then, I have a meeting until this. If I go outside, the closest supermarket is this far apart. I need to get this, so I need to be like this much in the supermarket, like really kind of juggling with time. How much minutes do I have? Like, will I make it? And will I like make it in time before the martial law? Because we had martial law imposed, before police is on the street for me to get back into the apartment, like carry the stuff and everything. And luckily, I had a couple of friends and a partner that was really lovely and generous, and that worked like from home, and was just like, fuck it, I can take break, excuse my language, any time, and we just bring like food. We just like screenshot your list to me, send it to me, like, write it in WhatsApp or Viber, and I'll like deliver it to you. And that's what we did. We would either call companies that started delivery of food and stuff, and like I would send it to my friends and charge it to my card. And a lot of that, I had to say, I was really fortunate enough that in the times of work, a lot of people were left without the work. A lot of people got their, checks, salaries reduced, cut. A lot of them had been forced to take vacation time to cover for the quarantine, and would have to take unpaid leaves and whatnot. That didn't happen to me. So I continued working for all the regular benefits and everything that I would normally do without Corona. So that was really helpful, and it allowed me to kind of, be able to just navigate through the entire quarantine and through everything without worrying about money. And even if police stop me and find me, I would be able to pay it. So it didn't really necessarily wasn't necessarily like so much dreadful on me, but it was really kind of fun and kind of challenging, because I really am not used to this dynamic with my family. I'm an only child, but they really kind of mixed sort of like your typical Balkan upbringing with kind of like welcome to military academy kind of stuff while I was growing up. So, you know, since 16 years old, I was in dormitories. I shared rooms in UWC at Erlam. And even coming back, it was, you know, it was like, I'm there, but I'm not really there. I had like my space, my everything. And now it became okay, like a really clear division of labor. I kind of gave up a part of my independence, which was, you know, I cook for myself during the quarantine because I worked so much. You know, my parents kind of took the chores and I took kind of being the provider, which was, you know, until my 16 years of age, really complete, very completely different roles, and it switched. And with me being sometimes the adult telling them, you cannot leave, please, it's serious. No, you cannot go to a birthday party. No, you cannot go play chess with that person. Like, let's be serious about it. No, you cannot go to our neighbor. You know, I know it's like one floor down, but you cannot really do that. And it just switched. It really switched, like the way I was raised and stuff. And it was weird for me a lot during the quarantine. And then being very curious, like, what are you always on laptop for? Like, what's happening? You know, why are you spending so much time there and this? And like, we hear you talking and what's happening. And so yeah, and living in sharing the living space, as Nabil mentioned, sometimes I would have to be like, okay, I need quiet time. I have a meeting. Can we stop listening to news on the full volume, or can we, you know, be quiet for 30 minutes or something? But yeah. So in overall, I would say it was very interesting time and very strange notion to be like a parent to my parents, if that makes any sense in the word. And I haven't really been spending much time with them during the quarantine process, which was another completely strange notion, like sharing the living, you know, the living conditions, the apartment with them, but not really seeing them because I was working so much. That after the corona and after I came back into the office, I feel like I feel some things have changed in a sense that now we all realize, okay, we need time together. Like, we seek each other more than during the necessarily corona. Because as I mentioned, they would come in my room and they would be unfortunately shushed because I'm on the meeting, and you know, and Balkan families are very curious, so I'm pretty sure they would start speaking to my boss if I would let them and ask all kinds of things. So yeah, it was just okay. It was very nice. Like, even if I was working really long hours and I completely forgot like to get the food, I was like, I have 10 minutes, okay, but I can do this. I can write this email before next meeting, or I can schedule this, or I can make this graphic before next email, trying to be as productive much as you can. And then you have your family member like at some point realizing, like, no talking, no anything, just like giving you food and like giving you coffee and slowly pushing it towards you, like being like, okay, I understand. Here's something to sustain you. I'm gonna go now. So that was really lovely. That was nice. But I didn't have that before, because usually I'm in the office, and then later on I'm in my own additional things, either volunteering or I don't know, a gym or with friends or so. Yeah.
First of all, like, well, Anja, first of all, I want to recognize and also apologize that I say Anja earlier and to recognize that it's Anja. But also the sentiment of conversation. I mean, truly, like, it's so nice to listen and hear from you and just like share this perspective. And a couple of things that just kept returning was something you said in the beginning, Deena, about like reinventing and redesigning, and that kind of flowing through each of your just perspectives and contexts. Another thing that popped up for me is each of you were talking about, you know, this desire, the desire to do as what was normal. So to go out to restaurants, to go eat, to go socialize. And then Deena, I'm in Montana, so also like very rural, just like any like Midwestern space. And I've been really contemplating, because here there's people who are very conscious about what's going on, and then there's people who maybe do not even believe the importance of it. I work in a restaurant right now, and it's very interesting to see the dynamics of tourists across like the US who are coming in, because there's such a spectrum of people who are either wearing masks or not wearing masks, all of these things. And so I've been really questioning also just like the age I'm in, and this kind of this FOMO that I've been I think I've experienced it in another way, but what I've been seeing is like the fear of missing out on something socially in a time where we haven't quite reconstructed how we're going to socialize or what we want or what we need. And so it was really nice to hear about this idea of desire. Like, so I desire to go do this thing, but then at least in the US, it's such an individualist culture that I sometimes feel there's a breaking point between like thinking about what I want and I can go do that because I can just do it. And then that moment to be like, well, I'm living with someone who is vulnerable. What are my protocols to make sure that I feel safe and they feel safe? Mm-hmm. And so that's been something that's been going on in my mind. Yeah, if you guys have anything, I mean, I was just kind of.
I think like one thing that like goes in my mind is like, as you're saying these points and I'm listening to everybody talk, is I'm trying to bring it back to like why we are all here, like in the commonality is we all are, I mean, children of Lynn is what I like to think of it as, but also we're all Earlamites, right? And I'm trying to like think about like, right, there's like, and how even my Earlham experience, not only for work, but has prepared me for this moment in time, and I think, and I'm just trying to bring it like back home and how we can relate and think about one another in this shared experience, right? And I think about like, we were in no shade, Lynn. We were in Richmond, Indiana, where there was like nothing to do, nothing. And so when we think about reinventing and inventing, right? We had to learn to create our own experiences, right? Like a trip to Walmart was like the highlight of our week, right? and riding in those like things that we shouldn't be riding in because we are all able-bodied humans, I assume. If I'm sorry for drawing that assumption if I'm wrong, but like, right? Like, and that was the thing. But also in that like experience, like when I talk about inventing experiences, but also then we talk about what you're talking about in that, like you're in Montana and there's like a mixed situation. I talk about being in Ohio in a mixed situation, but New York, it doesn't feel that way, right? The experience at Earlham felt very similar. Like it was like a shock to my system when I would leave the Earlham campus, right? Like, oh wait, there are people that are not progressive out there, right? There are people who don't care about each other out there, right? And that's like the same concept that's like going on here, right? Like when you think about like these rural areas I'm thinking about, because at Earlham, right, like it was normal as a Palestinian, right? I was born and raised here, but I'm Palestinian. And I was like, and like I went to Earlham, I was like, wait, majority of people believe that like Palestinians deserve human rights? That feels weird because that doesn't, right? And then that became like the norm to me. Right? Mm-hmm. Living in New York, the norm became that people believe that people wear masks, that whatever it is, right? In these more progressive environments. Then you like go out into Richmond, and you're like, wait, somebody's driving down the street with a Confederate flag? right? Like I go into the Walmart here and people aren't wearing masks and like look at me funny for wearing a mask. Like I'm the other, right? And so like this othering experience that exists and like how Earlham has prepared me and not prepared me for that, right? Like the idea of reinventing, Earlham allowed you to invent whatever you wanted. You could be whoever you wanted, whenever you wanted, right? You could be that kid wearing shorts with a bear bag in the middle of campus when it's 20 degrees outside, which really existed in my time on the Heart. And nobody thought, and everybody would be like, oh, that's different, but nobody thought anything of it, right? And because you could be who you wanted to be. And so when I talk about reinvention, Earlham prepared me for an experience where like I like allowed my creative, right? It's a liberal arts experience. It allows your creative energy to flow and think about like the impossible and dream the impossible, even though you're like, is this really possible? Can I really pull this off right now? But I'm gonna try, right? And or whether it was being a house manager and learning how to organize in that way, or being involved in all the student groups I was involved in, right? I really do believe that experience allowed me for the reinvention part of this experience. In the same way, Earlham didn't prepare me for the rural America and like those that don't believe what I believe. Earlham did not prepare me for that, and the world, and like right coming back to Ohio, coming from New York didn't prepare me for that. I'm just like driving down the street and people have signs on their yard that say we support the police departments here, right? We love them. And I'm just like, do you want me to go egg your lawn now? I'm not really quite sure what I'm supposed to do in this moment because that's not what I believe. The majority of the people since Earlham until now, so I'm not going to age myself, but along 11 years from my from graduation, not from the time I entered Earlham, right? So that's 15 years. Wow. 15 years from the time I entered Earlham until now. The majority of the people in my life are like-minded, which before I went to Earlham, I was used to the not like-mindedness. I wasn't used to being able to be creative, right? Like it feels like you have two choices in this life, and right, you're allowed to be an open-minded, progressive person who cares about humanity, but you're allowed to be very creative in your way of caring about humanity, or you can just follow. You can do what you think is right and be in that culture of individualism and not be creative and be like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do because that's what I feel like doing. And I don't know how you deal with that situation. Does anybody like, but to bring it back, I just want to bring it back to like how this experience kind of feels often like exactly how it felt for me at Earlham, which is like, sometimes I feel like I'm in this amazing world, but then I jump outside my bubble for a second and I'm like, oh, the rest of these people don't care, right?
I would echo that. And I think for me, the first time I kind of experienced that was coming back. So I lived in New York with Deena, for context, for a couple of years, not with Deena, but at the same time as Deena, a couple of years after Earlham, and then I moved. I wasn't lucky enough to live in the same apartment as you. I visited often. Only brunch. But I came back, and pretty much as soon as I came back, we went straight into the Brexit campaign, and seeing how divisive that kind of really was here in the UK, and seeing that right off the back of the Trump campaign, being in America and being able to live through a lot of that really helped me prepare, and I almost foresee what was going to happen, I suppose, and seeing that kind of momentum building on that side of the chain. But yeah, I'd echo the fact that I wasn't really prepared to deal with, I guess, the counter arguments or the arguments which don't really have any grounding in anything, right? It's just like a lot of it's just made up, whatever it is. But being able to talk to people who believe strongly in these beliefs that are just aren't true, let's say, was something that I began to understand a lot better as a result of it. I guess another huge thing for me is moving from the UK to the US and to Indiana. I never expected to be part of such a diverse and international student body. And to this day, through conversations like this, I'm still in contact with many people from from the international student body all over the world. And it's been kind of nice to kind of check in or see, even through social media feeds, how people are coping and how the situation is in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's kind of helped me to kind of see the direction that this thing is kind of moving in, and it's a perspective I don't think that I would have otherwise been able to see. So how is the virus, how is it on the ground, you know, in Japan, in Taiwan, wherever, in India? And how does the UK fit into that global bigger picture? Where are we in the stage of the virus? Are we lifting up too soon or too late?
Mm-hmm.
Are the restrictions good enough? Are they not good enough? Do people believe in masks here or not? And I know my friends, while we were still debating whether or not masks were effective here in the UK, I'm pretty sure that same discussion happened in the US in February or March. My friends, a close friend of mine who now lives in Taiwan, like, do not leave the house without a mask. Doesn't matter what people are telling you. If there's one thing you do, make sure you're always wearing a mask. And here in the UK, we were still debating it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just you brought one thing to my attention, like, and I think about, like, at the beginning of all this, I was talking to one of my best friends who's an Earlamite who was in Uganda, right? And I was talking to him in Uganda. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, and I'm like freaking out, right? And I'm like, this pandemic's going to kill all of us. And he started laughing. I'm like, what do you laugh? And I mean, our dynamic is very, he just makes fun of me consistently because I'm like very expressive consistently. And he starts laughing. He's like, you Americans. I was like, what? And he was like, this is normal for us. We're ready. Right. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you know, like, it's scary, but this is nothing like, right. Going from like Africa where like Ebola, right. I can go on and on and on about the epidemics that they've been through. And so for them, it's like, we're prepared. We know what to do. Maybe we don't wear masks, but we actually know how to manage this, like, in a way that doesn't destroy the entire country. So like London or New York, I'm interested in a moment to hear about like Bosnia, which is not a first world country, right? As opposed to England and two of the biggest cities in the world that like are hubs, right? Where Nabil and I are based, didn't take it seriously at first, right? And it's like, this can't happen, especially Americans. This doesn't happen to us. This doesn't happen.
And I think a lot of that was here as well. I think
and we don't.
A good thing that happened for us, which probably is bad to say, is Boris Johnson got the virus and almost died.
Who?
So our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Up until, like, he was still shaking hands a week before he got the thing.
Yeah.
Right? So, but as soon as he got it, I guess that right-wing side of the world kind of is, okay, this isn't a political thing. This is actually quite serious.
Yeah.
So it shifted the debate a bit.
Yeah. But even, right, we already know, I mean, I'm sure everybody on this call can, to whatever degree, but agree about the United States president, right? But we think about, even on the local level in New York City, where de Blasio, or there's like this debate going on between the governor and the mayor about what we should do. The mayor's not closing schools when Ohio has closed schools and there's less cases, right? Because, right, like, who's it, right? He's thinking about vote. Like, it's all so disgustingly money, and when they're opening up schools because of money, like, right? And just the way things work, and even on the progressive side of the spectrum, right? And it's just like, you know, at first I was like, okay, yeah, you guys are doing a good job but in New York City, our mayor, who is probably the most recognized mayor in the entire country, in the world, right, is like, he thought it was a hoax, essentially. Not hoax, but like, right, like, oh, wash your hands. Like, no, man, you've got people dying left and right. You should have pulled the trigger so much earlier, right? And to the fact that, like, even it took Cuomo, not that I'm not going to go into it, like, but Cuomo did do the pandemic right. That he did do right in the, like, he took care, but like, the fact that like Cuomo had to like institute things to get de Blasio to do it, right? And it became this like weird back and forth game between them before and meanwhile people's lives are at stake, right? And it's on the news. People are watching the mayor of the probably one of the largest cities in the world and the governor of this state fight like on the news, and they're throwing daggers at each other on Twitter. And I'm like, is this a joke right now? Okay, we get that from our president. We know that. But come on, guys, like, and now, like, even in Ohio, like the progressive parts of the people have left office. And so like things are not as tight as they used to be, and people aren't taking, and it's like, United States is not prepared at all because we think we're invincible. We think, like, right? Like, I talk to my family and friends in the Middle East. Yeah, it's bad, but people aren't dying. I mean, they're not dying because of COVID. They're dying because of other things, political unrest and other, but like people aren't, which is messed up, and their economy that was already failing is failing worse because of COVID. But like, this is supposed to be the superpower. This country is supposed to be like the idea of like the way the world functions. Borders are closed on every, nobody wants Americans. In general, nobody wanted Americans, but like now, they're like, if you're in that country, just stay there. Just stay. Nobody, no matter how strong our dollar might be for other people, they're just like, and that's a world I've never, right? Even as somebody who understands both worlds but has the American passport, I have never said like, oh, people, I can't go somewhere, right? Except for Israel, because Israel, we can get into that later, but like, right? Like, and it's,
yeah, you can't come here even if you tried.
Nabil, we can't go anywhere. We can't go anywhere. Arizona borders have been closed. No international flight. Like, come on, Mexico even closed their borders from us. Like, are you like not Trump? Like, Mexico's like, no thanks.
Is Bosnia open, Anja? Can people come? Other countries come in? You don't have any blockage.
Yeah, so I can go back and address all of the points if Deena is okay with that.
Go for it.
You're talking, then feel free. Well, my country is a third world country, so we like to address it. We like to call it Banana Republic because we kind of suck, and for some reason, banana in our slang means like Banana Republic means like a really, really, really bad country in like economics, politics, everything term. What doesn't help my country is that country had already like previous issues that were for a very long time unaddressed, were just like pushed under the carpet, and we were fed. 30 years has passed since our war, 25 since Dayton Peace Accords, which kind of borrowed the framework that we have today, but to people that's still very, very recent. And Balkan mentality is something like arguing who came first to Balkans, like tribally who came first. We still argue about that. And we are talking about Roman times, ancient times. That's how crazy we are. And I honestly don't think that there's no one crazier in the world except like South Slavic, like West Balkan countries. And this has proven to me. I came to Erlam really not knowing what to expect. I chose Erlam because I heard it's a really community and it's a supportive community. And my family situation is a bit peculiar. I'm a child of mixed marriage. I'm a child of a Croat woman and a Serb father that were on the two opposite sides during the war. Those nationalities hate each other and had numerous fights during 90s. Croatia kicked out all of the Serbs from Croatia. There were many paramilitaries. There were many atrocities committed, like really, really bad. And growing up in post war, Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm 1991 generation. So when the Dayton Peace Accords came to be, I was 4 years of age. I was a toddler. So I was the first generation of a post-war kids that were, kind of could understand what's really going on, but still really couldn't. Growing up surrounded by refugees, surrounded by kids that were, 100% of this nationality or 100% of that nationality, that lost fathers, lost mothers, whose fathers were killed in the line of duty, or whose fathers were killed during genocide, or or many atrocities, where family doesn't know where the remain is. Somebody in the family was raped during the war, all of that trauma. And growing up as a child during that trauma, my family luckily wasn't affected, and luckily wasn't affected. But I grew up in a country where if you were not a child of soldier, that's bad, first of all. And you have to be and your family had to be on the right side where you lived. Because within different cities, we were all ethnically mixed. We have 3 ethnicities that are now constituted people, Bosniaks being of Islam faith, Croats being Roman Catholics, and Serbs being Orthodox. And we are talking kind of like Russian Orthodox style faith. And all of the 3 sides were in the war. There were many atrocities, like the bloodiest war on the European soil since World War II. Insane things happened. And growing up in that culture, I never quite felt accepted. I went to Croatian national school, which heavily emphasized Croatia kind of winning the war through this random military operations, 2 big military operations, and cleaning their country. And, it was just fighting for independence. And growing up with a clear Serbian surname, because in Balkans we know by surname what nationality you are. We clearly know. And growing up in that, I never really felt accepted. So UWC was oh, maybe I will find my niche. Maybe I will find my group. Maybe I will feel accepted. And then I started feeling accepted, and I chose Erlang because it's a community. As Deena, as you said, you can be anything, and it's welcome. And I felt welcome, and I could be anything. I could be Anja. Nobody would tell me, hey, it's bad. Hey, you, the child of Serb, or you, the child whose father didn't fought in war, didn't support the cause of Serbia that attacked this country and tried to preserve the socialist republic or whatever. Or you this, or you that. I wasn't labeled in that way. I was just labeled as an international student, which I was. So it was fine, I am that, I am a foreigner in the country. And going from Erlang back to my country added another layer of, really, do I fit in here? Because I came with an open background, Erlang opened so many horizons to me and opened my eyes to so many perspectives. As Nabil said, living in such a diverse student body, it was impossible not to hear, stories from other people. And I really loved to hear them, how they live, how is this situation? Because we really weren't taught a lot. In my country, we were this is your country and goodbye. I really didn't know much about the world. So coming back to this country created this kind of, you're a foreigner, but you're not a foreigner. You spent so many years abroad and living in this community that were very international, very diverse, and suddenly you're back into Balkan mentality in the conservative country with all of these epithets, notions, consequences, traumas that still are very much present to this day. And I came at somehow the hopeful moment for my country when we tried to apply for the EU, and we kind of tried becoming not a third world country, and it didn't pan out for us because our politicians suck and they're horrible people. And I came at this moment where there was lots of youth that were very progressive and really wanted to do things, really let's do this, let's do that. And there was such a hopeful moment for my country. And then after 1 year, after 2 years, in 2017, 2018, I have seen so many of my friends who were activists, who were willing, who were volunteering, who were, really local forces on the ground, putting in work, putting in effort, changing the situation as it is, just giving up. They got tired. They simply got tired. It's like fighting the windmills. And they got tired. They said, I cannot afford anymore to be Don Quixote. I need to provide for myself, for my family. I want to have kids. I cannot be activists with kids because maybe tax from the political party would beat me. Maybe my kids will grow up in an environment that I don't want them to grow up. Maybe it's better if I move to the EU. And there was a lot of brain drain. A lot of my friends just left from West Central Europe, found where lived amazing life, but kind of just said, okay, goodbye, enough, and good luck. We also have a saying in my country, whoever is the last one, may he turn off the lights. So that kind of gives you a sense where my country is. I also toyed with the notion of leaving. I had talks with a couple of my friends that were like, okay, I have this job offer and this job offer, and maybe. And then I got this job offer and I decided, okay, let's try it out. Let's see how it goes. And I'm still here, coming as an Erlemite living in Mostar that's also had really bad consequences of the war, working in a building that is still what used to be a first line of war during fighting. My city is known as a case city, quote unquote, because we didn't have local elections in more than a decade. We do not have a city council. We do not have a mayor. They're all like technical mandates people, because two political parties that hold cities cannot agree on how the election would be. And they finally agreed under intense and immense pressure by international community, honestly. And they agreed to do it in like 2 to 3 years. And they're already fighting and bickering between each other, doing jabs at each other through like web portals, interviews on TV and stuff like that. So progressing forward, Erlam has helped me so much in terms of opening my horizons, and it really has prepared me to being very flexible. I learned at Erlam how to be flexible and how to kind of, what Deena said, create something for yourself. Now here where I try to change and that quite doesn't really work out and it's fighting against field mills, I started kind of creating my own, let's say, a niche, my own world. I have a people that accept me, that are not nationalistic, are not even, willing to take nationalistic or fascist idea into mine. But I also live in a city where there is a lot of people that are still nationalistic, that will still call you different names, that will still tell you, hey, you suck because of X, Y, and Z without knowing you. And I learned how to kind of live with it. It doesn't bother me anymore as much as it did when I was a kid. I don't know if it's because I grew up. I think it has a lot to do with Erlam, and I'm still I'm in touch with my Erlam friends, and I know that there is a community, a worldwide community that's there for me, and if these people don't accept me, then fine. They don't have to. But it is what it is. It's just, you don't have to. But talking with my friends who grew up here and who didn't leave the country, who got educated here, and telling them, our country is kind of trying and it's going back and forth with this European Union path. And, let's support this, let's support minority groups, let's support this. Like, why would I? I'm scared of losing my job, which is a real possibility for some of my friends. If they support Pride Parade, for example, by posting on Facebook, by tweeting about it, by, saying, even commenting, like, you go, we support you, they could lose their jobs. And those are cushy, well-paid jobs in a state-run companies. So, between your livelihood and a change, people choose livelihood. And I understand that, at least in the context of my country. Nothing changed and nothing necessarily will change. We will still stay the same what it is, and it affects life here as it is. We had, you mentioned, your mayors, your presidents, and everything. During this global pandemic, our prime minister bought through, and I'm not even kidding, a raspberry farm, a fruit farm, defibrillators for hospitals made by Chinese that do not work and cannot be put anywhere except in certain kind of ambulance that, guess what, we do not have, and we never plan to buy that kind of ambulance. The total amount spent was 10 million euros. That's a huge amount of money, especially converted to my currency here, which is convertible mark. And nothing happened. There were no unrest, there were no protests. People were like being very angry on social media, but nothing panned out, really, nothing. It was like, okay, yeah, 10 million of our euros thrown into the wind. We don't know where those defibrillators are. We don't know why the fruit company bought them. And this is the statement that he actually gave to the press when they asked him, like, why did you choose like a fruit farm to get you defibrillators? Shouldn't you like choose, I don't know, medical equipment provider or something? And he was like, well, their names sounded exotic, so I chose them. I'm not even kidding. Like, my politics is on the level of Monty Python. Like, if we ever want to, have fun and be like, oh, my country is actually doing good, we could be so much worse. You can follow our websites and just like see how insane everything is. Those Balkan Times on Facebook, if you want to like see articles about us in English. And what hurts me the most and is the huge brain drain and huge, this we do not want to change, don't get us out of our comfort zone. I don't want to venture out. I don't want to do anything. I'm fine being a conservative that I am, but I will go to a progressive country if I can bring my conservative idea with me. I'm not willing to adapt. I'm not willing to be flexible. And I see that in my people, unfortunately. And all of the people that I kind of know that are progressive, open, liberal, are more, hey, this isn't the place for me. That country over there is, so I'm gonna go there. And I understand that as well. I do, I truly do. But Erlam has prepared me or dealing with this. After Erlam, I was like, I know, I understand. Balkan mentality, Balkan nations, we are crazy, our country sucks. It is what it is. We are never going to change stuff. I wouldn't say hope is lost, but the light is flickering for us. Like, it's not completely shut down, but eventually it will be. Possibly we're a bankrupt country. No one knows. Really, we don't know. We have some credits that we even don't know to what they amount or what they pan out. In the terms of economics and this entire pandemic affecting us, it cannot, because we don't have economy. So that's good, I guess. You cannot lose something that you didn't have. So it will not affect us in that sense. But what Erlam has given me is a community that I can believe in, cherish, and bring the values back. And whenever I feel down, whenever I feel lost, whenever I'm fed up with politics, with everything, with nonsense of our bureaucracy, of, daily life of living in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I remember that there is Erlam and there's people at Erlam that probably are still living the Erlam that carry the same ideals. And that means overall to me. I know a couple of Erlam alums that stayed in B&H and are working, have now employees of their own, and that are, doing the best they can. And we still keep in touch. Having a global family really helps. And as Nabil, you said, like, even just talking, hey, what's happening in your country? Is it really like they're saying? And did you really do this? When the whole affair with the medical equipment, with the defibrillators came out, I had international friends who were like, does this really happen? Like, you were on our news. Like, how bad is it? Is this really happening? And I'm like, yep, unfortunately it is. But having that community, having these conversations, even today's conversation, really opens an eye, and it's, for me at least, it's comforting to know that people are around the world carrying Orlam ideals of inner light, inner truth, working for the better, not because they have some benefit of, but because of the community, and kind of having that community ideal and a teamwork ideal and willingness to help. So that is very comforting for me.
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes before we're going to be cut off. So we're going to have to keep our answers short. But I did want to find out from each of you currently, what with the uprisings that are occurring in the United States, what's going on in your areas? I know, Deena, you're in New York, so you can definitely talk about what's happening here. But what's going on, Nabil and Anja, in your countries as far as the uprisings that's happening here in the United States?
Well, I'm going to be brief about Bosnia because there isn't. Nothing is happening. Nothing, really. We have problems of our own, and people on social media, we are very homogeneous in terms of race. So we understand the struggle, we definitely do, but it doesn't click with my people. They just don't see it as something that they should protest for, that they should go out on the street for. And I have to say, we are very passive as it is already. Maybe it's because we've been through so much that we are just like, bring it on, whatever happens, that we don't, that we are very hard to go on the street for anything, really. It's very hard to get us, to protest. So I don't know if it's that or just because we are very homogeneous, and I'm afraid to kind of say it, but my people perceive it that it doesn't affect them at all. Both of different conversations, just they're like, it's happening, we know, it's there, it's a huge movement, but yeah. Or it just might be to our mentality, being very passive and being very.
Nabil?
So yeah, I think we've seen a lot more positive and similar protest movements here, gathering some good momentum off the back of what's happening in the US. I think it's been sustained, which is good to see. We have had for a while a number of prominent Black people in the media, in certain levels of fame, trying to highlight these issues that are prevalent in UK society as well, and they never really gathered any steam, or they kind of died out very, very quickly and were shut down by main sectors of the media. This doesn't happen here. It's mainly an American thing, or it's not as bad here as it is over there. We don't kill people here, so on and so forth. We don't profile as badly here. When all this stuff is definitely still happening, it's definitely in certain sectors of British society. So we are, and protests continue, which is good. So I'm sure, I hope that you saw the pictures of the statues being thrown down across the country a couple of weeks ago. People are still out on the streets every weekend, and the good thing is that we haven't seen an increase in rates of coronavirus as a result, which is the big worry. So the discussion is still ongoing, to the point where even our Premier League football league now has a moment where all of the players take a knee before every game starts, which may or may not be, some discussion about that in itself, but I think it's continuing to highlight the issue, which I hope can only be a positive thing.
Deena?
I think it's like a multifaceted answer, and I don't know if we have the time. Also, just because not only is the world crying out because of this, but also being a Palestinian right now is I don't know what the word is for it, but it's not fun as we are facing our annexation ourselves, right? And it's kind of like, as the world outcries over here for Black lives, right? The oppressed community in the United States is having, hopefully, what we in Arabic in the past have called the uprisings in Palestine, called the intifadas, right? Our revolutions. We kind of feels like a revolution. Who knows, right? I think it's like two sides. I'm like, well, is this the same? Is it not the same that I've seen before? I mean, I have a tan right now, not because I've been sitting out in the sun, but because I've been out in the streets, right? Protesting, walking, things like that. But you don't know, I do the work with, I've been doing this work for as long as I can remember with Black and brown kids. And I was just talking to one of my close friends who's also Palestinian, but why do I care? Like, of course I should care about everybody, but why does this resonate so much with me as an individual, right? Like, I don't sleep over the way, and I like feel sick to my, like in ways that feels like it's personal. And I really do think it's because I'm Palestinian, right? And the same thing is happening to us in Palestine, what some will refer to as Israel, right? And that's happening right now. We're right, really any chance of Palestine ever existing is about to go away. So, and it's interesting because there was a Palestinian Lives Matter kind of situation going on over there, in the way that we as Palestinians identify with the Black Lives Matter movement, for those of us who have decided to educate ourselves and really want to understand that it's all one struggle, right? And growing up in this country, being a Palestinian, children of immigrants, growing up, going to protest my entire life, right, for Palestine, and then really understanding that it is all so interrelated. In this country, when we come back to this country again, this country has set the precedent for what oppression looks like. The United States, and it has taught Israel what oppression looks like. We fund them, right? The United States funds that. So it's like, I think I'm so devoted to the Black Lives Matter movement, because my hope is like, if we can free this, then maybe we can be a model, right? Maybe also because Black people deserve liberation and all those things, because they've never, ever had liberation in this country. I don't care what anybody says. They have never, ever been equal, right? I am only here because of them. They have allowed immigrants to come to this country, right? And if we can liberate them, maybe down the road, Palestinians will be liberated in Palestine, right? Because that means our entire governance process will change in this country eventually, which will affect the funding of that country. Who knows? It's not going to happen in my lifetime, let's be honest. It's not going to happen. And even if this revolution continues in this country, we're not going to see the fruits of it, at least for another 10 years, at least, right? We have no, even we can't get a decent person to run for office. That's going to help move this along. So what we do is, right, this is what I've been preaching, and I think a lot of the people on the ground in America that are like-minded preaching is, affect your community first, right? And that's what PAGS taught me. Gypsy taught me that, right? Like, you can't make peace and you can't have true liberation until your community is liberated, right? So I think I've been focusing on my community, right? The Black and brown kids that I work with, the Black and brown people I interact with, my family, right, who have some racist ideals. I'm trying to whisper because I'm like coming here and like yelled at for saying that. But like, affect your community first, because believe me, it will affect you. It will affect you. Like, so it's about bringing the narrative to the personal. And yes, I could talk about how all the streets say Black Lives Matter on them, how everybody is like protesting and whatever. But like, I think I want to end with, like, even in Bosnia, even in London, even wherever you're at, racism exists, right? We just heard it from Anja, how racism exists in her way, right? So it doesn't have to be black and white racism. Racism exists everywhere, and it manifests itself in so many different ways. And Earlham really taught me actually a way to look at it through this critical lens. I grew up in a very white I was one of the darkest kids in my school. So look at me, I'm not that dark, right? And I'm only dark again because of a tan. You know, and you only knew I was Arab because we were very vocal about it. But that was a whole thing in and of itself. But the racism exists everywhere, and like we really got to like not be scared. And it hurt, and it's scary, and it is scary, especially here. I feel much more like I'm wearing this in my house. I'm wondering like, in New York, I'd wear this shirt, no problem. No problem. I'll still wear it out, but it's a normal thing to wear in New York. When I'm wearing it out here, I am making a statement. I'm telling people that I'm Arab, which is a target on my back. And I'm saying that I believe Black Lives Matter. And a lot of people in Middle America don't believe Black Lives Matter. They don't. And so it's like on us, not only in America, all over the world. If Black people are free, we will see the world will slowly, very slowly, become free. Because being black is like the lowest end of the totem pole because you can see it. So I think that's the way that this country has been, like, right? Those that are like-minded like me, that's the way we're approaching it, is like, do what you can. If you're in COVID and you don't feel comfortable going in the streets, a social media post isn't enough, right? Sign your petitions. Even if you're not in the States, do what you can, right? Read, educate yourself, figure out why it exists the way it exists, and how do we undo it? And even if you don't think you're a racist, you are. All of us in this room are. What have you done to perpetuate that cycle? And how do you undo it? And I think that's like, right, that's where we start. And that literally is the premise of being an Earlham grad, is understanding how do we make the world a more livable, lovable community where we can raise each other up despite our socioeconomic background, despite our race, despite our religion. That sounds very flowery and hippie, and I get that. And everyone jokes that's how PAGS majors think, right? We are also known as people against getting salaries. So, you know, we don't, but that's the reality. That's the reality. I do, like, conflict has to exist, yes, for the world to go around. I do believe that, but it doesn't have to exist like this. And it's on us as people who have had the opportunity to live in a world, even if we don't right now, in a world where love and acceptance exists, even if it was only for 4 years of our life. It's on us to perpetuate that cycle wherever we're at. And that's, I'm sorry, like, I kind of answered your question, Lynn, but like, I think like the whole Earlham experience speaks to like the Black Lives Matter movement and what we as Earlham grads should be doing.
Rihanna, do you want to close this up?
Well, first of all, thank you. I think that this is an amazing resource that like we are adding to everything else in this time. And thank you once again for just sharing your perspective in this conversation, because in all of the loneliness and all of the isolation and all of the community, this is now like another one, and it's reconnecting. So thank you.
I wanted to thank you. We have alum graduating 20 some years ago that will be part of these conversations and talking about their perspectives and the connections that are going on today, that we're all having the same experiences. So thank you, each of you. Do each of you want to do one last 1 minute thing and 30-second?
Well, quickly, I want to thank you, Lynn and Rihanna, in establishing this project and creating this project and actually going through with this project and getting us all together on Zoom to discuss this. And I'm really looking forward to the outcomes of this. Once again, thank you, Nabil and Deena. It was wonderful to hear your perspective, your insights, our situation, at your place. It was also great to see you. Nabil was actually, I remember now, my manager at some point when I was office of events. So that was, it was great really to discuss it all, to see different perspectives. So again, huge thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Thanks for putting the time effort. Lynn, I know this has been a small baby of yours for a number of years, and now we spoke about it even as I was graduating. So it's taken some time to get this. Soriana and everyone else who's probably going to watch this afterwards, thanks for helping Lynn push this one through. And yeah, really excited to see where it goes. And of course, if you need anything else from me, let me know. I'm happy to help as much as I can.
Brianna, I first want to thank you for helping Lynn put this together. It was wonderful meeting you, Anja and Rihanna. And Lynn, on behalf of all of us who have had the opportunity to work with you and be a part of what I want to call your family, I really want to thank you. You have done a remarkable job of staying in contact with us, even when we don't respond to emails or texts because life is going crazy. You are one of the most compassionate and understanding people I think I've ever met in my life. And I am really thankful that you have really put the energy and thought into creating a project like this and understanding the importance of the perspectives of everybody from different walks of life. And you often tell us you've learned a lot from us, but I think we've learned a lot from you. I really do. I really think that everything I just talked about, you encapsulate that, right? Like community and love and unconditional love and support. And I really want to give you, as my kids would say, big ups, right? Which is huge kudos for being that anchor for all of us in this room. And I can't imagine how many more people, and whatever you need, even if I don't respond, you can call and then I'll probably respond. I'm there.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So all of you take care, be safe, and I'm always here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you everybody for listening. It was really great to hear all these stories and perspectives from Anja, Nabil, and Deena, and we hope you enjoyed it as well. In the next episode, we will be talking to Arita from Kosovo, Anand from Nepal, and Cyrus from Ghana, so tune in again to hear from them. And before we go, we want to give a quick disclaimer. This is an interpersonal chatcast. Any opinions expressed in these conversations are personal and through signed consent belong solely to this project. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. Any views or opinions expressed are not intended to malign or slander any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or state.